everything else seems to make sense. Yeah? When we put Jesus first in our lives, whether it's all of the things around Christmas season that seem busy or stuff in our lives that makes us seem like things are just not going our way, when we put Jesus first at Christmas, everything seems to go the right way. That Jesus is the reason for the season. And when we put him first, everything seems to go according to plans.
Awesome. Great job, Logan. Appreciate you. Thanks for being a part of helping Pastor Bailey and getting those boxes all cleaned up and ready to go. Well, this morning I'm going to start a new series with you. It's one that I'm excited about. We are in Advent season. This is Advent week 1, so we're talking about hope. But the series that I've got ready for you this year is called A Manger Full of Names, and it really comes out of Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. It's a phrase, or it's a verse that probably you're very familiar with. I will tell you that if you grabbed one of the sermon notes, you're going to notice a couple typos on it. Let me just ask you to correct one typo with me very quickly. On point number 3, it should not say the sin had a, it should say the son had a. So we'll get there. It'll make more sense once we get there. But I just want you to go ahead, just cross out sin, write in the word son. It'll make a lot more sense once we get there. This is the problem when we're around, holidays and I write my stuff way in advance and don't proofread it. We run into problems. So we're going to have a great time together. But today what we're talking about, we're kicking off a series that comes out of Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. And if you don't know the verse, it's on your paper, but let me read it to you this morning. It says, "For to us a child is born, to us a son is given. And the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." What we're going to do over the next few weeks, we're going to explore each one of those names that is given to Jesus. And we're going to talk about what it means for Jesus to be the Son who has been given, to be the Wonderful Counselor, to be the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, and to be the Prince of Peace. I want you to know that when Isaiah prophesied about Jesus who was to be born, he was seeing something that God knew was going to occur, but he was seeing it several centuries in advance. In fact, if you know much Bible history, what you'll know is that from the end of the New Testament to the time when Jesus came into the earth, there was 400 years of silence. 400 years where there was not a biblical text written. 400 years where it seemed as though the people didn't know what to do because God didn't seem to be speaking very loudly to them. I'm sure there were messages that were given. I'm sure there were conversations that were being had. But in the moment when Jesus showed up, it has been after centuries of no response whatsoever is what it feels like. And in all of this moment, when Jesus shows up on the scene, he was laid in a manger in a cattle stall. Now catch this. If you were to look at Jesus and not know anything about the prophecies of what were said about him, he looked like just a normal little baby. It didn't look like there was anything special about him. He looked like every other baby, the billions of other babies that have been born from the beginning of time to where we are today. And yet, because we know the prophecy and everything that was contained in that baby, we can see hope and we can understand that there was a prophetic voice that was introduced to our world on that day. I will tell you that the timeline of the world changed the moment that Jesus was born. Not only do we measure time in the BC and AD era, but really the trajectory of the way that God was working on our behalf changed the moment that Jesus was born. Because Jesus was a fulfillment of every biblical prophecy that was said before him. In fact, I did some research this week, and I just wanted to know how many Old Testament prophecies were actually fulfilled in the birth and the life of Jesus leading up to his resurrection after his death. There was one theological scholar, his name is Payne. Payne says there's 574 verses that were fulfilled in Jesus coming to earth. Edersheim, another Old Testament scholar, he said there were 456. I did some research, and throughout my years in ministry, I've come to the conclusion that if you want to be very conservative, like you say, I don't want to double count, I don't want to do anything. If you're just extremely conservative, over 300 prophecies that were spoken about Jesus in the Old Testament are fulfilled inside of his life. 300 times the Old Testament prophets said, there is one who is coming, and Jesus showed up as the one who was promised. Where I want to take you to this morning is Isaiah's prophecy in Isaiah chapter 9, where it's this idea and this concept that a child showed up where no one else was expecting it to. Point number 1 I'm going to share with you this morning is that there was a child born and a son given. It comes out of the first part of Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. I labeled it section A, but really you can just look at the first couple lines there. It says, for to us a child is born, and to us a son is given. I want you to catch something here. There's repetition that's contained here in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6. And anytime we come upon repetition in the Old Testament or the New Testament, it causes us to pause and say, hold on a second, why are you saying the same thought two different ways? Now, you may look at the prophecy that's contained here and say, well, it's because it's in poetic form, and that's why there's just a double meaning or a double entrance into it. For to us a child is born, but to us a son is given. But I think there was something more to it. What was repetition for Isaiah becomes a Holy Spirit moment for us. Because repetition shows importance. Repetition causes us to pause and say, hold on a second, there's something that we're supposed to catch here. And I want you to catch this, that Jesus was born and Jesus was given. The two different words mean two different things. Number one, Jesus was born. I think it's very important that we understand this was not like Jesus just like showed up out of nowhere, right? He is a physical baby that was born